I'm Kat Cole, president of Cinnabon, and this is the What the Speak podcast.
What the Speak, episode 31. What the Speak?
Do you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch? If not, these expert discussions and insider tips can help you right now, today. Welcome to the What the Speak podcast. I'm your host, Brian Kelly.
Struggling with feeling comfortable in front of an audience when you present? Or maybe you're confident, but you have difficulty stumbling over filler words like and ah. Well, you can start kicking ass today by signing up for our weekly VIP updates. As a bonus, you'll also receive 11 free tips that will uncover 6 psychological secrets to public speaking, plus 5 tips on how to stop using filler words. Go to whatthespeak.com/VIP. Kat Cole, are you ready to answer the question, what the speak?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Kat, you're the president of Cinnabon, the Ooey Gooey brand so many of us hate to love.
Yes.
And you are probably likely the only executive with the coolest headline that Forbes magazine has ever written, titled From Hooters to Hot Buns.
Yeah, glamorous, I know.
And in addition to all of this really cool stuff, you're a fantastic public speaker. But let's hear it directly from you. Can you briefly tell us about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I am the president of Cinnabon, and so I get the privilege of building the team and supporting the franchisees and licensees that grow anything that falls under the Cinnabon brand. So that means the Cinnabon franchise business that we're famous for, the malls and blended beverages and airports and cinnamon rolls and all these great venues. And so those are all franchise businesses. So we help other people create their own businesses under the Cinnabon brand. We also license Cinnabon ingredients to other manufacturers that makes their products ooier, gooier, and more awesome. And we develop our own products for other restaurant chains and for the consumer packaged goods channel. So we make products for Burger King and Taco Bell and several other well-known chains and retailers. And so that business is about a $1 billion brand. And we just hit $1 billion in consumer product sales this year. And so it's a wonderful business, franchising in 56 countries. And then outside of that, I do a lot of nonprofit work. I sit on boards for organizations that elevate and educate women, that advocate for small business. And I'm an advisor in startups, both in the food space and the technology space. Because of all of that, I have had a very rich life and have the good fortune of being able to go to events and universities and groups and help share those stories and provide insights in a public speaking forum.
Now, when you speak publicly to audiences of all sizes, is there a topic that you're speaking about, or is there a range of topics?
Pretty broad range of topics. In the last few years, because of all of the publicity around our company and my very non-traditional personal story, I've talked a lot about that journey. So we'll typically do a presentation around lessons from unexpected places, and unexpected as in Hooters, unexpected as in Eastern Africa, really pull out some interesting lessons that I've applied to everyday life that come from some places that people wouldn't ordinarily think to look for those lessons. I've written a book with a co-author called Small Changes, Big Impact. So many of my speeches, keynotes, and sessions are about the small changes that can make the biggest impact in your personal life, with a team, with a company, or even a community. So usually it's those two big buckets of topics, but I've been brought in to help companies on everything from communication skills to leveraging social media to build a brand to a change management and culture integration in companies.
Got it. Okay, now, Kat, I've seen you speak, and I want to get into some of the particulars in just a minute. But before we do that, could you share with us your origin story? How exactly did you get into public speaking? Where did it all begin for you? And maybe you can walk us through up until today what that journey's been like.
Sure. I started public speaking when I was 3 years old. I stood up on a stage and had to read for our little pre-kindergarten class. And then when I was 5, I was the one who was reading from the book for the graduation from kindergarten. And it sort of always occurred that I ended up being the person out front speaking for the class or for the group, and always took very vocal hobbies and roles in school, debate team, cheerleading, things like that. So I was always either arguing or speaking in some way. And then when I was in my 20s and I had gotten into the corporate world behind restaurants, I was in the training department. So I spoke and taught for a living, essentially. And then I got involved in nonprofit groups, and that led to leading volunteer committees, which then led to speaking in very public forums that weren't with my company, that were just in my community. And it just evolved from there. It's kind of like any activity. You do it enough, you become known for it, or you build great relationships in that industry, and then it sort of feeds itself. You find new opportunities to share and learn and speak. And so it's always been a part of my life, either my actual job or something that I've done on the side to help others.
So it obviously sounds like you had a natural affinity for getting up in front of an audience from an early age, but I would love to hear, can you describe maybe one specific area that you've struggled with? Maybe it's something in those early days, maybe it's something still to this day that you struggle with, and perhaps how did you overcome it, or how are you working on improving it?
The tough thing for me is that because my story and usually what people want me to talk about is so complex, they want me to talk about 10 things in this amount of time. And so the speaking challenge is meeting the needs and the desires of the group or the audience without leaving out those really important points, but doing so without taking away from the time you need to tell a story around a major point or provide context. And so it's the delicate balance of the time constraints and the desires of the audience, and then having the discipline that even though they say they want to know about 10 things, to say we're going to talk about these 3 and we're going to do so very meaningfully, or we're going to create more time around it so people can talk and ask questions and engage.
Got it. Okay. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I think for those of us that feel like we've got it nailed down and that we're great presenters, that there's always something that we have to work on. And I certainly know it's a struggle to try and not cram in too much in your presentation, especially when the folks that want you to come and speak are saying, we want you to talk about all of these different things. So it takes discipline to be like, nope, this is what we're going to focus in on, and I'm going to work on trying to deliver as much value with the time that I've got.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's transition right now to talking about your particular expert perspective. And one of the reasons why I was really interested in talking with you is I've seen you present, and you are one of the few executives that I've seen give a live presentation that you just have this certain ability, this certain air around you that's not corporate, that's not stiff, not rehearsed, or like you're reading a speech. And I really wanted to get to the bottom of how you do that. So the first question I have for you in this area is, how did you learn to communicate the corporate message in such a way that's so appealing and personable?
Because to me, it's not a corporate message, because that's probably the biggest part of it, is when I'm sharing things about what we do or why we do it, it's as if I'm talking to family or friends about what we do and why we do it. And the lawyers would love to get a hold of the talking points and get me to stop cussing every once in a while and get me to maybe use a little safer series of descriptions about things. But that's not who I am in my personal life. It's not who I am with my employees and my team. And it's therefore not who I should be when I'm speaking publicly. So I don't know. It's just, to me, speaking, even if it's 5,000 people, it's a conversation. It shouldn't be more than that. It really is sharing. And, the old adage is speaking and communicating is really about getting through, not just delivering something out. And it seems to me that people are a lot more receptive to a topic or someone else's story when they feel like they're being talked with and not talked to. So it's probably more just my general style and approach that helps tell the same thing that a normal, corporate person would say, but it's in a very real way because it's really what we do and it's really how we talk to each other inside the company. And there's no difference in how I would share what we do, even from saying ooey gooey 10 times to disturbingly delicious. That's the stuff that came from our employees. That came from our culture, and it's very real. And so when we share it externally, people laugh and they feel like they're talking to their friends or one of their goofy family members. But that's really what we're like. So that's probably why I don't listen to the lawyers.
Well, I mean, that's so good because, like I said, when I saw you speak, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like your passion, your excitement, and the way that you're able to connect with an audience because of that. And I think, we've had a lot of guests on the show that obviously talk about that. Like you're going to get up in front of an audience and talk and make a connection with those individuals sitting in those seats. It's all about the passion that you deliver and being fully connected to your message.
Yeah.
So my question to you as a follow-up is, for those audience members right now watching or listening this podcast that are executives, what advice, what insight could you recommend them to try and break out of that mold that maybe they've been forced into to follow a certain message and really get to the core of what their culture is or their corporate message is?
One of the things that's always helped me is just talking to people a lot one-on-one. Before the event, during the event, after the event. The more real one-on-one conversations you have, the more you will shape your natural language in a way that is relevant to that group. So even when I go to speak at an event, I try to get there a bit earlier so I can just talk with people. And when they say, hey, what are you going to talk about? Or I read about this. What does that have to do with our event? And so I'll share some thoughts and they'll push back or ask questions. And then often in the speech or in a keynote, I can say, I was talking to this person and they asked me this, and it was a really good question. It made me think about things differently. So I think one tip is have a lot of one-on-one conversations about the general content that you want to cover with the people who are going to be listening or people who are like the people who are going to be listening. So at least you have a sense of what their experience will be when they hear it. And I think that is maybe a little bit of what's missing is the empathy, the thinking about how just because you have one corporate message doesn't mean every audience is going to hear it the same way. They all have very different filters and very different points of view and very different experiences with you as a person or with your brand or with the topic that you're covering. And it's such a miss if you don't take the time to think about how they will view and hear and absorb and process what it is that you're sharing, so that just as when you're having a one-on-one conversation with someone, you can be almost responsive in the moment to their reactions. The tough thing in a speech, though, is there are 5,000 people and you're not seeing 5,000 reactions. But if you've talked one-on-one to 10 people, maybe you'll get a sense as to what their perspective might be, and it'll allow your delivery to reflect their concerns or their point of view.
Yes, it's such great advice, and thank you for sharing your kind of take or your perspective on that. Now, I was going to ask you about the use of adjectives like ooey gooey and phrases like, was it disturbingly delicious?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, have you gone through coaching to kind of take that approach? But it sounds like obviously it's a very natural extension of your personality as well as the corporate culture at Cinnabon.
Yeah.
But to kind of twist that question a little bit with understanding that insight, I would love to ask you, has your presentation style something that has been naturally, organically evolved over the years that you've been getting up in front of audiences, or have you worked with any type of coach, presentation coach, performance coach, etc.?
No, I've never had any type of coaching or training of any kind. But the audience is a coach. You can feel the energy in a room if you're paying attention. And that's a coach. That's feedback. That's an incredible feedback loop that if you're very sensitive to it, you can actually tweak real time your style or your dynamic or even your content or your speed and your flow. And then, of course, you get literal feedback afterward. But you've got to solicit it. I used to, when I first started speaking, when I was in middle management, and this was when I was speaking for my job, and I would go into the bathroom stalls and just listen to what people would say. Now, obviously, I'm only getting the female perspective because I couldn't hang out in the men's restroom. But that's a sign of someone who really wants to know the truth. I wasn't just saying, hey, did you like it? Did you love it? It was genuinely, I wanted to sit there and hear what people were saying on a break or afterward, because I wanted to know that so I could internalize it objectively and say, oh, wow, I guess I didn't think about the fact that they didn't know what this meant, or I didn't think about the fact that they have experienced this in their company and maybe I touched a nerve. Those are the things you really want to know. So I just did a lot of listening over time, observing and paying attention and tweaking. And it was just like when I started opening businesses overseas and other countries where I didn't speak the language, but they would speak a little bit of English and I spoke English. But I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, with a very heavy, horrific Southern draw. And they couldn't understand me. So I never had coaches on enunciation or articulation. I learned real time that if I didn't keep changing and improving the way I said something, people could not understand me. And so it only took about a month and my accent was totally gone. I wasn't thinking I need to get rid of my accent. I was thinking I need to continue to work harder from my side to communicate in a way where they can understand, and then we can get the job done. So it's that same desire to really make an impact and put myself in other people's shoes, and then take the responsibility fully on myself to make the changes needed to be able to have the best possible relationship and connection. So it's that same muscle that I built then that I've used in not just big speeches, tiny meetings, group of 5 people sitting around a table. That's communicating, that's presentation skills. And so I spend a lot of time observing people and being very sensitive to what they're doing, and then tweaking what I do to try to make them more comfortable or make the connection stronger. And it's, even though I haven't been coached, I've done a lot of coaching on presentation skills, communicating, and influence through watching nonverbal reactions.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing of it too is that it's very much an intentional approach. It's not like thinking, oh, this is just going to happen, or it's going to, one day it's going to click. It sounds like, especially with you personally, and your approach to getting better at this, is that you very intentionally said, this is what I'm going to do, or these are the ways that I'm going to understand and observe what the response is to my message, or how I'm communicating that message, and then directly take that feedback and apply it to what you're doing.
I just, I don't know that I ever knew that that's what I was doing. It was just an interactive style, an interpersonal style. But when I was forced to help other people start to improve their presentation skills, I had to look back and ask myself, how did I figure out that doing this is helpful, or that doing this is distracting? And I figured it out by just watching people and being sensitive to the reactions of people. And it's covered in one of the books I co-authored. And I've met with such great speakers, people who are so much better at speaking than I am. They're so much more timely and thoughtful and poised. And I would love to do some things the way that they do it. But they do it for a living, and they do it all the time, 10 times a week sometimes. So I really admire the skills of people who speak for a living, because their timing is impeccable. They're so poised and succinct in their delivery. And so I do watch speakers and think, I'd love to be able to do that one day, but I have to go back to running the company. So maybe I'll try that the next month whenever I speak in front of a group.
All right, Kat. Well, let's close out our discussion with our rapid fire Q&A. So these are going to be short bursts, quick questions, first thing that comes to your mind. And we're going to start off with, do you prefer slides or no slides when you present?
It depends. Depends on the audience. It depends on how much time I have, and if I'm just going to do a quick overview of a concept or an idea, no slides. If I need to talk about something that I think people do not have a natural vision of, such as when I do work in Eastern Africa, the pictures say 1,000 words. They're almost more powerful than the stories that I'm sharing. So there are just some topics that lend themselves to a visual backup of some kind.
Yep. Now, when you do slides, do you do them yourself, or do you have somebody else that works on those?
Oh, no, I do them. No one touches my slides.
All right. So now I want to know, who is one speaker that you admire the most, and why?
Man. There are so many good ones. Does it need to be a professional speaker?
No, could be anybody.
Only one?
Just one. First one that pops in your mind.
The first one that popped in my mind was a guy named Michael Staver. He wrote a book on courage in leadership, and we brought him to actually speak at our global convention for Focus Brands a couple of years ago, and he now coaches many of our franchisees, and his presentation style is quick. His stories are so deeply rooted in his personal life. He's insanely hilarious, not trying to be hilarious, just naturally hilarious, and wicked smart. And so that's a really beautiful combination. And when it's delivered with authenticity and a desire to help people lead, it's pretty powerful. So he's the one that just came to mind very quickly.
Great. Okay, so Kat, what's the funniest, craziest, maybe most awkward thing that's happened to you on stage when giving a presentation?
I've fallen off a stage.
Really?
Yeah. Just walked off. Just fell. Luckily, it was one of those little ones. I don't know that was the funniest one. I've had pants rip. My pants have ripped.
Oh, no.
I've fallen off the stage. My pants have ripped. Just wardrobe malfunctions in general are hilarious and something that I think when you are young and speaking, you just don't think about. But now I don't wear things with buttons. Very few zippers, no hems that could come loose. I have lived in almost all black my entire life, but that started because I always drank a lot of coffee and I always spilled it. And so, I just need not worry about that whenever I'm talking with people. So wearing all black sort of disguises that. So some bizarre wardrobe malfunction or tripping and falling on a stage, those are the things that have, they happen. When you speak enough, they happen. You just laugh it off, and as long as you're not showing anything inappropriate, you tape it, stick it, do whatever you need to, and just keep on going. It's cool.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, you've kind of revealed this a little bit in the course of our discussion, but very specifically, I'd love to ask you, what kind of impact has your ability to speak and communicate had on your career?
Pretty massive. I think not so much about the speaking in terms of public speaking to large groups of people, but the way you phrased it, the ability to communicate, to deliver a point, and to speak in front of groups no matter what size, it's incredibly powerful. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't convey it in a way that connects, you're limiting the distance it can go. So I have been fortunate that speaking is something that I've gotten comfortable with as I've grown up, and that I've placed a lot of importance on communication skills, both verbal and nonverbal, because it's allowed me to teach other people those skills on my team or people that I work with. But there's no doubt that it's allowed me to represent myself as maybe someone who is more educated and more professional than I actually am. And has enabled me to open doors for ideas and for other people because of my ability to fluidly communicate. So it has had an enormous impact on my career.
Love it. Okay, so the last thing we're going to end on is I would love to hear if there's one piece of advice that you wish you would have received in those early days of your career related to speaking or presenting that you now know and you wish you would have had back in those early days.
I wish when I worked with my co-author, her name's Nadia Bilchik, and she's a CNN talent and booker and producer, and she's just this amazing communicator. And she has a fabulous South African accent, which I'm very jealous of. And so everything she says is instantly more awesome. And she told me once, this is a quote from her, and she ended up putting it in the book that we wrote together. She said, Kat, it's never about the event. It's always about the event after the event. And what she meant was, and she digs much deeper into this in her sessions when she coaches people and when we have taught sessions together, is that you have to remember that you're not just responsible for that moment as a communicator. You're responsible with the way people walk away with that moment and what they think about it and how it makes them feel. And she always used to challenge her groups to say, what are people thinking, feeling, and doing? TF and D. as a result of your interaction. And so it's just, I think when you get that down pat, when you hear it's not about this moment, it also takes a little pressure off of you, because it says even if you screw up this moment, it's really about what they walk away with, so you can recover. You can do something that makes them more comfortable. Or even if what you just said wasn't funny and you were trying to be funny, you can still be funny before the day is over. And maybe they'll walk away thinking you're funny if your goal is to be funny. So she really taught me that, don't take every single moment too seriously, because I watch her help so many people who are not good at speaking, and it helps them take the pressure off themselves, and you'll freak out and you'll obsess over one point or one topic. And she used to always say, it's not about this event, it's not about this very sentence, it's about the event after the event. There's always the next thing that you can influence. And if at the end of the interaction with you, people are walking away thinking and feeling and doing what it is that you wanted them to do, or what you were trying to help them with through that interaction or communication, then it's all worked out, even if one or two little pieces didn't go smoothly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kat, I want to let everybody know that we're going to have links to your social media profiles as well as your book or books. And just want to thank you again for coming on the show, sharing a little bit about your experience, your journey as somebody who speaks regularly, and quite frankly, somebody who truly kicks ass when they speak, present, or pitch.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been awesome chatting with you.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Kat.
Thanks. Good one.
Are you working out right now or listening to this episode while driving? If so, I know you're not able to leave a rating and review in iTunes at the moment. However, next time you're in front of your computer or smartphone, could you be sure to do so? Just go to whatthespeak.com/audio or whatthespeak.com/video. Thanks so much for your support.
All right, here we go with the outro.
Thanks so much for joining us today on What to Speak. Be sure to visit whatthespeak.com for show notes on every episode and to sign up for our email list to stay updated on resources that'll help you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch.